This is the special release of Talking Tactics, where we show you the career-making power of a single, clever tactic idea. I'm your host, Diana Kibiltz, Strategy Director at Ology, and this is what I have for you. 5 inspiring episodes, 5 higher ed pros you'll recognize, each with a story of a single tactic that opened up doors in their career, and in some cases, even redefined the norms of how we do our work in higher ed. Join me as we take a trip down memory lane to their early career moments, the challenge they had to solve, and the tactic that did the trick. After all, if a single tactic defined the trajectory of their career, what's stopping you from defining yours? Are you ready? Let's talk tactics. Hello, tactic friends. Welcome to another episode in this special release of the Talking Tactics podcast, where each episode welcomes one of higher education's most recognizable names, who is here to share a tactic they tried early in their career. And this tactic opened up the doors, or some doors, and started the path to the success they have today. You're just going to love my guest today, because honestly, who wouldn't? My fantastic guest is Jon-Stephen Stansel, Mr. Say It Louder for the people in the back. JS is an award-winning social media professional and basically our higher ed social media authority, if you ask me, with over a decade of experience managing, building, and creating content for brand social media accounts. He has run social media accounts for Amazon Prime's Invincible animated series, Hyper RPG, Better Place Forests, the University of Central Arkansas, Texas State University, and the Texas Department of Transportation. Oof, I need a breath after all that. As well as consulting for many television series, films, and small businesses. As director of social media for Chaotic Good Studios, JS worked on social media strategy and content for, wait for it, Avatar, The Way of Water, which was beautiful, by the way, and Amazon Prime's videos, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, also beautiful, among several other major entertainment franchises. Listeners, this is the moment where we all stand up and we bow to Jon-Stephen Stansel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. That's quite the intro. Yeah,
I know.
No need to bow at all.
I feel like I needed like at least 4 pauses in between all the things that you've done. Just incredible.
It's been a wild journey for sure.
Yeah. So what are you up to these days?
So I'm back doing freelance work. I'm currently working on Invincible season 2, which premieres next month. So we're right in the swing of that. As we're recording this right now, it's New York Comic-Con. So all kinds of stuff going on there with Invincible and one of my other clients, Black Market Narrative, an imprint that does the comic books Radiant Black, Rogue Sun, and No One on Image Comics. So that's keeping me pretty busy this week. It's great.
Honestly, it's like, this is like the dream job, right? Or at least for those of us that romanticize it, it is.
I have to pinch myself almost every day. I get to work on stuff that if you had asked me 10 years ago where I would be, and you told me this, I would have laughed at you. Like, there's no way.
Well, how interesting. I am going to ask you 10 years ago where you thought you were going to be. That's the point of today's episode, is to really take us back in time and let us know like how your career started in higher education, and then we're gonna ask you all the questions to understand exactly how you got to where you are today. Excellent. But take us back in time.
So around 2008, I'd finished my master's degree. I went to Japan and taught English there for 3 years.
Amazing.
And 2008, which is I thought, oh, now's a good time to come back to the States and make my career right before the Great Recession. And I was looking for a job like so many people, but also looking to keep up my Japanese. So I called the local university and said, hey, I'd like, you have a conversation partner. They're like, well, what were you doing in Japan? I said, teaching English. Like, we have a job for you. Come teach English in our intensive English program. So I was doing that. My plan was to go back and get my PhD and teach literature eventually.
Okay.
But I was teaching English and started noticing that my students weren't paying attention to me. they were paying attention to their phones, and I
Ugh.
tried to figure out how other teachers were like carrying in baskets and like put your cell phone in the basket. And I didn't want
Yeah.
to treat my students like elementary school kids. I was like, how can
Yeah.
we make this a tool and not a toy? And started introducing social media into my classes and just went from there.
That's so let's establish a timeline here for a moment. 2008. I'm trying to think about where I was, what I was doing. Was Facebook already open for people like outside of EDU accounts? I think yes.
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 Yeah. To set the scene, the iPhone came out in 2007 and smartphones were just
Oh,
starting to get popular.
yeah.
Twitter was just beginning, still pretty new and pretty fresh. You couldn't start Facebook pages yet.
Right. Right, right,
You
right.
just had profiles.
Mhm.
So it was still very, very early days before social media as kind of we know it today.
So here you are as a English professor. You're seeing your students on these magical little boxes of devices with the internets on them, and you're thinking, how do I use that? How do I use that to connect with them? How? What a pioneer, JS. um. So, all right. So, what did you do? What did you do?
So at first, I was really into photography at the time. We had all of these events, and I would be the default photographer. I'd take pictures of, and I'd put it up on my personal Facebook page to share with students. It was the easiest way to do it. Which
Ooh,
is,
that makes
yeah,
me cringe so hard right now. Ooh.
yeah. Now it's like, but back then it was like, okay, whatever. And now, and then they introduced groups, and I was able to like
Right.
create a group for each course, and trying to figure out ways that I could have a classroom outside the classroom where they could ask me questions, where they could consult with their peers, even to the fact like, some other teachers were complaining like, oh, at the end of class, the students are like taking photos of the whiteboard and why can't they write notes? I'm like, no, this is great. They're using the
Yeah.
technology in a way that works for them. And I was actually saying, okay, at the end of each class, who is going to take a picture of the whiteboard and share it to the group today?
That is
And what
so
I would start
cool.
noticing is
Okay.
students were actually annotating the notes. The photo had like handwritten annotations as they posted it. So really trying to figure out how to make that a tool. And then when they created pages, we created a page for our department, and then I could stop like sharing on my personal account and be like, okay,
Yeah.
all the photos will be on the Intensive English Programs Facebook page, and
Yeah.
was running that.
So here's what's really interesting thinking about that 2008 and today, how people are still using Facebook groups probably in very similar ways. And you were doing it 15 years ago. That's incredible.
I still haven't closed those groups either. I
Oh,
probably need to do. I
it's
like to go back and like look at them. It's fun.
a little throwback moment, a little nostalgia moment. Okay. And so I assume you didn't stay in that role of teaching forever. So what was the next career move that happened from there?
So what had happened was we hired a new director of international engagement, and she saw what I was doing and was like, you know what? You're an adjunct on a year-to-year contract. Would you like us to create a whole new role of international communications manager? You quit teaching, come over and just do this full time. Recruit for we
Yeah.
basically a one person marketing team. The school at the time didn't have any marketing material specifically for international students, so it was like manage the website, create print
Yeah.
materials, do the socials, just a little bit of everything. I had just bought a house and was
And you're
like, oh
like,
yeah, I've got
yeah.
a
Oh,
mortgage payment.
stable
So yeah,
employment?
stable
That's a
employment sounds
yes.
really good. So I jumped on board and started doing that. And from there, that really started to get noticed, especially the social media side of it, as it was
Oh,
starting
yeah.
to really grow in popularity. So other departments started asking for my advice and like, hey, what would you do for something for the advising center? What about admissions and so on and so forth. So started, even though I was international communications manager, was kind of like the go-to person on campus for anything social.
So, kind of trying to summarize it in a way, I think the challenge. Would it be correct to say that the challenge at the time was like really finding a way to use this new technology to engage students? Were other parts of the university finding that the traditional channels were not really engaging students? Like, what was the problem you were brought in to
A
solve?
little bit of both.
Yeah,
With the international side of it, and for anyone listening, like at the university I was at the time, we had students from all over the world with ranging in English level skill
right,
from I can go straight to classes to
right.
I just need maybe a semester of extra help with intensive English to I am day one. I can say my name is and that's about it.
Yeah,
So we're trying to meet the needs of that spectrum of international students. And we
right.
were noticing, like, checking email open rates, nobody was open their email.
Yeah.
Now, as a native speaker, like, I have a master's degree in English. Like, I had trouble keeping up with my university email and how much stuff was coming in.
Wow.
Imagine if
Yes.
you are an international student in an intensive English program, you're still learning the language. There are these emails that are absolutely vital for your immigration status,
Yeah.
all sorts of things that you really need, but you're also getting the just water hose of university emails and having to filter through that. Things are going to get lost in the shuffle, even if you're trying. And a lot of the students weren't trying,
Yeah, totally.
no fault to them, but
No, it's
uh,
always the email sender's fault. I'll just stand on my soapbox for a moment because I am obsessed with email, as most people know. Yeah, email could be better. Let's move on.
so with that, it was like, okay, how do we get this information to them in a way that they can easily understand, don't have to filter
Right.
through? And social media worked for that, but we also worked with the intensive English program to say, okay, we're going to create a video with students
Oh.
sharing like this information they need to know about, uh, immigration information, taxes, whatever, boring subjects. Can you share this in your class and make it a part of your curriculum?
Okay.
So they'd watch the video in one of their intensive English classes. They'd have a teacher there with them, like, oh, what are the key points here? Yada, yada, yada. But also helps them almost, as like first year experience, like, oh, pre-first year experience,
Right.
like, oh, here's how you get these resources at the university. So that really helped. And as that worked really well for international students, other departments quickly were like, well, how can we apply the same thing to the
Right.
advising center? How do we
Right.
get students to show up for their advising appointments? Can we use social for that?
Well, it happened again. Prospect Paul is excited about attending your institution, but is getting consistently confused by all the information and tasks he needs to complete to enroll, creating friction, and even worse, melt. You knew this would happen again, which is why you've been flagging the need for a come to Jesus meeting with leadership from marketing, admissions, and IT to audit the digital experience for prospective students. Here's the problem though. You're not going to convince Mark from marketing to let go of his marketing automation software, or Adriana from admissions, who just got set up with her new CRM, or Isabel from IT, who is still working through ticket requests from last Christmas. But what if you could come to the table with a solution that did not require anyone to let go of their software, while at the same time ensuring a frictionless experience for prospects and current students alike? Well, my friend, guess what? Today is your lucky day. Meet Pathify, an innovative higher ed engagement hub that puts students at the center of their college journey. Pathify sits at the center of your school's digital ecosystem, becoming the single user experience interface, tying together all systems, content, and communications. Their engagement hub elevates the information that matters most and pushes systems like the SIS behind the scenes where they belong, making it simpler for students to discover and engage with the opportunities your institution provides at every step of their higher ed journey, from prospect to alum. What's even better, Pathify has a mobile experience that provides 100% parity with the responsive web app, so your campus app is always in sync. Pathify is a platform that every stakeholder on campus, from marketing to admissions to student affairs to IT, etc., can get equally excited about. Learn more about how Pathify is uniting strategic units across campus and bettering the entire student experience by visiting pathify.com. And be sure to tell them that Day from Talking Tactics sent you their way.
It's the classic, hey, I have this idea. I think we should try something. And then you immediately get noticed. And that's how things kind of grow, right? What I love about this is you didn't just think about, hey, like maybe the channel isn't working, but it's also the way we're presenting the content. So you kind of took advantage of the strengths of having basically the ability to share multimedia on social and meeting them where they are, right? Which is this device that they're holding in their hand. That's incredible.
Exactly. I kept
Yeah.
saying it's a tool and not a toy. How can we show them to use it as a tool and not a toy?
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. And like why did you think it could work? Did you just have a hunch?
It's a gut instinct. I knew what worked for me. And I knew,
Yeah,
I had trouble going through all these emails, but there was this new thing called Facebook. And,
totally.
how can I use that? I'm on it all the time. I can tell the students, some of the students are on it and some are not. And also at the time, students were still using Facebook. So it was like,
Yeah.
maybe we need to show them how to use this, because this is also, once they leave IEP, how they're going to connect with their peers. That
Right.
was how you found out what was going on campus.
Right.
Maybe
right.
not so much anymore, but back then that was still the case. Our parents hadn't gotten on there yet.
That's right. It was still cool back then. We promise. We promise to any Gen Zs listening. We were cool. Okay, so what did you need to implement this? I mean, creating Facebook pages is free, but in order to kind of start communicating this way with students, did you need to have approval? Did you have backing, resources?
I needed a camera and some editing software, which
Mhm.
I self-funded, and I would not recommend anybody doing that today.
Don't do it.
Like, don't do
Yes.
it. You just ask for it. But that's really all it took. It was a bit more ask for forgiveness rather than permission at the time.
I feel like that's the norm with these tactic ideas.
I tried to play, and I wanted to be by the book, so did contact like university marketing and web development who were running the university social at the time. Like, hey, what do I need to do to be sure I'm playing by branding guidelines and doing everything? And
Yeah.
and once you do that, and you open that door, they're like, oh, thank you, because there's so many people out there trying to do it without that. So
Right. Yeah.
that was about all the permission I really had to ask for.
And very low resources,
Mhm.
really, right? I mean, it was just pivoting to this new technology, right?
Exactly. Just using my phone and my personal camera.
Yeah. Again, ask for the resources, but very low resource tactic. So, okay, you were international communications manager, you're kind of doing this for your program, your students, other people are picking it up. What are the results that you saw? Was there more engagement? Were there more students? Was there more retention? What was it?
A bit of all of the above.
Yeah.
The comment thread became really useful, where students would ask questions about I-20s and upcoming events and things like that. We saw an uptick in student attendance at events that we held for them.
Wow.
And then even when students came in, we gave them a surveys, of the process, before you got to the States. Like, yes, the Facebook page was very useful to us. It was actually a factor in the decision for us to come here.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So yeah, those sort of things were really impactful. And it was like, okay, well, we need to keep this up. This is working.
Well, talk about walking the walk with saying personalized attention, wraparound support. Like that was actually what was happening, right?
Right. Exactly. And for like retention too, we had like orientation for international students, but it happened like 2 days after they got here. Imagine like you land in a foreign country, and you're still like getting over your jet lag, and you've got all of this information about university just thrown at you.
Yeah.
You're going to forget most of it. So having that
totally.
throughout the year, like reminders, okay, hey, remember this from orientation, this is happening now, was really beneficial as well.
Yeah. And that's honestly something a lot of people don't think about, is even just timing, right? Like when you grow up in North America, the timing of when school starts and ends and college starts and ends, like that's something that you've just experienced for 18 straight years, right? Or more. But it isn't the same in other countries. Like semesters start on different months, and like even just that, you have no idea you're supposed to be doing something in August because it's always been the vacation month, right?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I have a little PTSD, I guess. So, okay. What I love about this story, JS, is that, back in, 15 years ago, you're like, let's try this. Like you had no idea it would turn into this social media being this huge part of how we know you even, right?
Mhm.
So how would you describe the impact of trying that thing 15 years ago on your career today?
Oh man, it totally changed. I was gonna go back and get my PhD. Like I
I
didn't get the
know.
PhD. Didn't happen. I'm not teaching literature. I'm doing, I'm making my money in 280 characters or less.
Oh,
But
I
yeah,
love that.
it totally changed what I do and what I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and also saw this as a tool for myself and professional development and things
Mm-hmm.
that how I could put myself out there and even further my own career, which we can discuss a little bit
Yeah, definitely.
about. I had my first performance review and I was still teaching at the time, and the director said to me, she said, you're doing really great. Why aren't you doing more professional development? And I didn't want to give her the honest answer, which was, well, you rejected my last 2 requests to go to conferences and you still haven't reimbursed me for the one that you accepted.
Oh, ouch. Yeah,
Which, yeah, it's like, well, yeah, that's why I'm
that's
not doing
why.
it. But that kind of stuck with me. And also the idea of like publish or perish. I was going to get my PhD. You
Mm-hmm.
want to publish. So when I was working on these things for the international office, I was like, how can I share this?
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing here, because I don't see anybody else doing this at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked for opportunities to go out and present. Started at regional conferences for like associations for international students.
Okay.
For there's organizations for ESL, things like that, going out and presenting there and saying, well, hey, I'm presenting and I've got a discount, so maybe I can get that funding to go.
Yeah. I'm on
and
the
then,
program. I'm going to have to be there.
And then I did a poster session at Hyatt Web one year.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was really the catalyst for me. That was seeing the enthusiasm there and seeing other people doing social media professionally. It was like the click went off in my brain. It's like, you know what? Of all the things I do for my job as international communications manager, social is where I want to be. And I
Yes.
want to do this for a university.
Yeah.
And I went back home with the resolve of like, a year from now, I don't know if I'm going to change my career. I'm not going to be just doing it for the international office and at the admissions office or whoever, just the default person. I'm going to run it for the university. And if that's at the university I'm at now, great. If it's not, I'm going to do it somewhere.
Yeah.
So it wasn't they didn't have that position at the time. So went to Texas State University and was their first full-time social media manager.
So, oh man, I think that's just so incredible because, this show has had a few episodes of Tactic Ideas kind of claiming that, hey, if you do some of these things, you might get noticed, right? And it might kind of help you in your career. But sometimes that doesn't quite happen internally, right? Like sometimes we have to go out and seek that for ourselves. And I just love that you share that part of the story, which is, okay, if within my own community, which they're appreciating it, they're understanding it, but that's about as far as it's going to go. There's this whole community of higher education professionals, hundreds of other like really awesome people, thousands of really awesome people that want to hear from you. They want to learn from you. They want to notice you. They want to see you succeed. So I just love that you just did that for yourself.
You have to, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Like,
I always say that when I feel like I'm bragging too much. It's like if I don't do this for myself, no one's going to pay attention to what I accomplish. So, yeah, it is what it is. So okay, after you kind of went back with that resolve, what has your career looked like since?
Oh man, it's changed completely.
Yeah.
I went back at some point. The university I was working at did open that role, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to my hometown a little bit, and I took that on, which was great. And but during COVID, I got a little burnt out on just a full year of crisis comms, and didn't really feel like I was getting that support. It felt more, I wasn't being listened to as like, okay, this is what we need to do. It was more like, post this now, post this thing. And despite all of my feelings of like, hey, maybe this is not the best thing to post sometimes, I was just getting, I was still dealing with the repercussions of all of the negative comments, things like that. And my wife just said, you know what? You've got about 10,000 Twitter followers right now. What if you just quit your job and put out there that you're looking for something different? And
Oh, wow.
I thought,
that's brave of her.
Yeah. Well, good for, it was this thing where we had been living off my salary for a long time. She had just gotten a job. She's like, hey, you take a turn,
Oh, I love that.
And, but I put it out there on my Twitter feed, and I was expecting to stay in higher ed, maybe going into the vendor space rather than university space. And I put it out there, and my DMs were almost full within, a couple hours. And one of them was somebody from Amazon Prime Video that said, hey, from your Twitter feed, I can tell you know social. You also are into comic books. Would you be interested in freelancing on this new show we have called Invincible? And I jumped on that, and that changed everything from there. Started doing more entertainment projects, got to work on some other shows, got hired by a company called Chaotic Good Studios that does franchise management. Got to work on they were like, hey, we get to work on Lord of the Rings. I'm like, sign me up.
How do you say no to that? Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. So it's just honestly having kind of been watching your career for at least the last 5 years, right? Like we've been connected online for a bit. As I said earlier, kind of jokingly, but also 100% true, like to a lot of us, you are the social media authority for higher ed. And like, how would you say you got to that point?
A part of that, I think for me, like I said, it all comes back to like my original plan of like, I'm going to get my PhD and teach literature. And that idea of publish or perish was in my head. And when I was asked to switch from faculty to staff, that never left. I was looking at this and I'm like, especially like looking at the homepage, you look at every day, every news item's like, Professor so-and-so presented at such and such conference. Professor so-and-so appeared on a podcast. I'm thinking like, man, I was presented at a conference. I was on like 3 podcasts this year. Why are we not celebrating our staff the way we celebrate our faculty? I think we represent the university just as much. And actually went to one of my supervisors who's actually, was the media relations person. I said, hey, why don't we brag about our own department the way we brag about other departments? Like we should be doing that. So she's like, well, write the press release. I'm like, okay. So I went to High Ed Web and presented like,
and you wrote
University social media, yes, presents at conference. And because because my feeling was I'm going to these meetings with faculty, and these people are incredibly intelligent, and they are, and they deserve the kudos that they have. But sometimes there can be that feeling of, well, you don't have a PhD, so what do you know? And like, they do read the homepage. So maybe I'm not doing this so much to justify my career, but when I go into that meeting with that faculty member, they know I'm doing those things as well. And I am an authority in my field, just as you're an authority in your field. So please, let's have some mutual respect here, you know? And that doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the person. There were some people up at the top that were like, why is this person, always brag, not bragging, or who do they think they are tweeting about social media strategy? It's like, I'm just trying to share what I know and be a good citizen of my professional community.
Yeah. And I honestly, I think that's key, right? Like, and that's one of those consistent values of the most successful people in higher ed. It's you learned a lot, but you share everything you've learned. And that's why so many of us have learned from you and know you. So thank you for all that sharing.
I learned just as much sharing,
That's right.
To me, it's like, it helps me process my own thoughts a little bit. And I learn from others as people reply, and it just as a tool for professional development, not just for learning about your profession, but also, building your own brand and advancing in your profession. It's just a tool that I think is absolutely vital.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. So we're coming up to the end of our episode here, and I want to ask you, for our listeners, and if you think about our listeners as 2008 JS, Jon-Stephen is sitting there thinking about, what do I do with this new technology? We have new technology upon us right now. What advice do you have for those early career higher ed professionals?
Get out there. You have ideas. Some are going to work, some are not. Don't be afraid to get out there and talk about what you're doing. Even on year one, you have experiences and insights that are valuable to the entire higher ed community.
100%.
If you're comfortable putting that out there and sharing, by all means do it. Go speak at a conference. Don't say like, oh, I don't know enough about X, or I've only been working in higher ed for 1 or 2 years now. Even that perspective of somebody who's fresh onto the higher ed scene is valuable for us all. We need those reminders. And conferences need the higher level experienced speakers, but they also need the 101 just basics. So get out there and start doing it. It's rewarding on so many levels, and whether or not you think you have something to share, you have valuable insights. Go put it out there.
And what advice do you have for folks that want to start building that personal brand? What are some of the things that you would recommend?
For me, it's just about consistency and making it a part of your daily routine. I try to post at least once a day, whether or not it's going to be good or, it's so easy for us to be like, oh, this is not like, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it will get better as you create more and more. So just start and, share your thoughts and share your ideas, talk about what you're doing each day. You never know who's listening. I think that's the scary thing. I think high school students really get it drilled in. Like, don't post too much on social media because that might prevent you from you never know who's listening. I say, hey, you never know who's listening.
Yeah, it could be a good thing.
Right. Yeah. And that's what worked for me. There's somebody at Amazon Prime Video that was like, hey, let's hire this guy. You just never know. So put yourself out there.
Go for it. That's great advice. Great advice. Well, Jess, thank you so much for being on this special release episode of Talking Tactics. I love being able to trace the success back. I know your success is not just due to one single tactic, but what I love is that one moment many, many years ago that just opened up this entire other possibility, this realm of possibility for you, and how awesome that's been to watch you in that journey.
It's been quite a journey. So I'm glad it's happened. It's not what I expected, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah.
Well, and neither would any of us. We wouldn't have you as our, say it louder for people in the back, representative. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you for sharing your story and your advice. And to our listeners out there, I hope you're a little bit braver now. Keep walking the walk and talking the tactics. Thank you for listening to Talking Tactics. If you're inspired by what you heard today, I want to know. Find me on LinkedIn by searching for my name. That's Diana Kibilds, DayaKibilds. And if you're enjoying Talking Tactics, please rate and review the show, because there is nothing I love more than a good grade and positive reinforcement. Finally, if you just can't get enough good content, check out the other Enrollify Network podcasts for more higher ed marketing and admissions knowledge and inspiration. Season 2 of Talking Tactics is coming this January. Until next time, keep walking the walk and talking the tactics.